What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and today I get to review one of my favorite movies of all time, The Avengers. And this superhero movie is just the superhero movie. It is so cool. It is so good. It is so well done. And I loved it from the very first time I saw it in theaters until now. It is just such a good, fun film. And despite the fact that it's now been eclipsed in many ways by things like Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame and other superhero movies, I still think this movie, however simplistic it is, still has a lot to add and still has a lot of value. And I want to talk about that today. So, as always, I want to give a quick spoiler warning and just say I will be spoiling the entirety of the movie. So that's your little warning. I will also be spoiling any Marvel movie that came out before it. So that includes The Incredible Hulk, which I really won't be talking about, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Captain America, The First Avenger, and Thor 1. So if you haven't seen those movies and you don't want them spoiled, here's your warning. I will have a small segment at the end talking about how this movie relates to future MCU movies and now that we can kind of see it in hindsight, but that'll be a small section which I will forewarn in advance there later. For the most part, this video will just be focusing on basically phase 1 of Marvel. So, diving it in, let's talk about character, because character often makes or breaks a movie for me, and boy does this movie have character in spades. It is a team-up movie in every sense of the word, or phrase. And first and foremost, we get to see our characters come together. And I know it's kind of trite these days, the MCU, characters mixing and matching, but it was really cool back then to see these characters that were only hinted at being in the same universe now actually come together and be in the same movie. And that was just so cool. On top of that, you have the abilities mixing and matching. Thor shooting lightning at Iron Man and his suit charging up, which was really funny. Thor, he doesn't exactly throw, he lands his hammer on Captain America's shield, and Captain America's shield is able to withstand the hammer, but he gets squashed in the meantime. And all the other fun little combinations of these characters' abilities was really, really fun. And then I think the main thing, and the heart of this movie, is the clashing and synergizing of personalities. You see Iron Man and his sarcasm throws off Captain America and Thor, who are both more serious characters, at least in this movie. But yet, that same sarcasm and that same jokingness and loose attitude actually synergizes really well with Bruce Banner, because Bruce has been treated all his life as that monster, at least for the last couple of years. And now he has Iron Man over here just being like, no, you're just a buddy. You're a bro. You're a mad scientist just like me, and we can be friends together. And it's great. And I especially love all of the little character moments like that and how each of them combine. And there's more than just that, but I think that hits on an important fact, which is Iron Man. And I want to focus on Iron Man especially because he is the center and focus of this film. In fact, I remember when it came out, a lot of people called it Iron Man 2.5. And I kind of tend to agree with them just because it really is a continuation of his story, which I think is totally fine and works so well for this movie. By the way, side note, armor up on screen, one of my top, 2 favorite armors of all time. I love the design and look of it, and I love how it functions in battle. I'm a nerd about those things. One day I will do a tier list of Iron Man's armors, but that's not today. So, moving on, the point is with Iron Man is that he's the only true dynamic character in this movie, a character that actually changes as the movie goes on. And I think this change really works and makes the movie work because of 3 distinct reasons. Number 1, Cap actually calls him out as self-centered in the middle of the film. He acknowledges, as we've seen him be self-centered throughout the film, Cap actually points it out, you're a self-centered hero. You've only done hero work for yourself. You're not a true hero. And I really appreciate that because it makes his sacrifice at the end of the movie when he shoots the nuke up into space that much more poignant. On top of that, you have Pepper. And so the second big thing that works is that Iron Man and Pepper share this cute scene at the beginning of the film. It's kind of separated from the rest of it. It's just them talking. It's a day in the life of what he's doing and stuff, just working with Pepper to make clean energy and stuff. But it's really cute and it's done really, really well. My kudos to the actors. And then at the end of the film, when he's delivering that nuke, he tries to call her and she doesn't pick up. And it makes it tragic. And it makes Tony's sacrifice real because now there's stakes. He's losing out on this great relationship. She's losing out on this great relationship. They are losing it. That's what he's sacrificing, and it works so well. Lastly, you have the buildup of previous movies. And this one, I want to take a break from Iron Man and just talk about how the Avengers movie as a whole works so well because it was built up to by so many other movies. The entirety of phase one was building to this movie, and it did such a good job doing so. And I don't think this should take away from the enjoyment of the first Avengers film. Quite the contrary, I think this should be celebrated. The fact that the Avengers really was the fulfillment of the cinematic universe. Up until this point, the MCU was a cool idea. This movie made it a cool reality. Because not only was this movie a really fun movie to make, but also it made bank at the box office. People loved it and think it's amazing. And I still think it's amazing to this day because it combines all these characters that were built up in previous movies. And that is so cool. And I want to take a step back and focus on character. Now, while Iron Man might be the only dynamic character, we still learn a lot about the other static characters in this movie. Case in point is Black Widow. Now, her character doesn't really change. She's a cool super spy at the beginning. She's a cool super spy at the end. But we learn so much more about her. First and foremost, her friendship with Hawkeye, or Clint Barton. And I love seeing her and Clint be such good friends, and her being willing to sacrifice her mission with the Russians in order to save Clint because she knows he's been compromised. And that's really, really cool. Also, her friendship with Coulson is awesome. Then we have her interrogation scenes, and there's 2 of them in this movie. She interrogates the Russians and Loki in the same way. She makes herself appear weak and unassuming, and this lulls her victims into a false sense of security, and then they reveal more than they should, and she tricks them, and it's fantastic. It's done so well, and I think that's really cool. Lastly, I love the fact that she is able to stand with the Avengers toe-to-toe. She may not be able to pack as much of a punch as Iron Man or Thor, but she's still a crucial part of the Avengers team, and I love the fact that she is the one that figures out how to disarm the teleportation device, the Tesseract, and closes the portal. Next, I want to talk about Captain America. And with his character, we learn a lot about how he is adjusting to the modern world. He's kind of off-put by everything, and he doesn't know who to trust. This is a brand new world, brand new people, and we see that mistrust lead into S.H.I.E.L.D. and then lead into Nick Fury. At the end, he even says, Nick Fury has a lot of blood on his hands. I don't trust him, but I do trust the Avengers, and he wants the Avengers to succeed, which makes me love Captain America even more. On top of all that, Captain America begins to be a leader in this film. He was a leader in his first movie, but now, like 100 years later, he is still an effective leader. Despite it being with aliens and gods and the Hulk, he is a good team leader, and I love seeing him fill into that role. Next, we have Bruce Banner, and I really enjoyed him in this movie. I loved his mild-manneredness and how timid and shy he was, but also he had humor and was funny, and he was just a really nice guy. I liked him in this film, and they did such a good job making him such a strong juxtaposition to the monster that is Hulk, and I love that. Top of that, we talked about his friendship with Tony and how wonderful that is, and then one of the most powerful scenes in the movie is his depression with being the Hulk and how that drove him to try and put a bullet in his mouth, and it failed. And it's such a powerful scene that to this day it still moves me. So I really like Bruce Banner. Next, we have Nick Fury, and while he was a cameo in all the other Phase 4 movies, he's now a full-fledged character, and I love that. I love the version we got of him. He is still the ultimate spy. His secrets have secrets, but he is a spy with a strong moral compass. He is a good person at heart, and that is amazing. Evidence of this is the fact that he institutes the Avengers despite his superiors' misgivings. He disobeys his superiors' orders to fire a nuke on the city, going so far as to use a missile launcher to stop a jet from taking off, which is awesome. And lastly, and perhaps the biggest thing, is when the Avengers question him about S.H.I.E.L.D.'s real interest in the Tesseract, he comes clean. Now, granted, Iron Man did just hack into S.H.I.E.L.D. and find all the files and stuff and could have read it all about it, but he does choose to come clean, and I'm sure that's breaking protocol and breaking orders and whatnot, but he doesn't care. He does the right thing, and he tells them why he wanted to have a deterrent against alien invasion like Thor and Loki. And that is really interesting because on top of everything else, it shows Nick Fury's insecurities. He may act all tough and like he knows all the answers, but that's just a front. He is truly afraid for the Earth's safety if there are people like Thor and Loki out there and they literally have no weapons to stop them. And that is a powerful character, and I love Nick Fury in this movie. Next, I want to talk about Coulson, and man, oh man, what an important character. He is the glue of Phase 1, appearing in 4 movies, Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Thor 1, and the Avengers, and that is really, really cool. On top of that, his connection to each of the Avengers is fantastic. More than just the movies he's been in, we learn that he's on a first-name basis with both Hawkeye and Black Widow, insinuating the fact that these three have worked together a bunch. And honestly, I love the idea of them being this trio that's just like the power trio of Shield and like the three top agents, and that is just such a cool imagery. And I really wish we had like a side story showing some of their adventures, but doesn't matter. I also love the fact that Coulson is a Captain America superfan. It was so funny when I first saw it. It's still funny to this day. I love how serious he normally is to everyone else, but then he gets all giddy and excited around Captain America. It's hilarious, and it works so well. Lastly, I can't talk about Coulson without talking about his death in this film, and it is fantastic. It is emotional, it is painful, it is sad, and it hits all of the characters in all the right ways, and it's so well done. And probably the best thing about it is that he has stayed dead. I know that they resurrected his character on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the ABC TV show, but that doesn't matter. So far as I'm concerned, he is dead because that show has never crossed over with the main MCU. So I love his character. I'm really sad that he died, but I'm also glad that his death is so powerful. Lastly, I want to give a quick shout out to Maria Hill, the second in command to Nick Fury. She works so well as a Watson to his Sherlock. I love her. I think she's really cool in this film. But that leaves us with one more character, and that is Loki. He is our big bad, and I love him. I really like how menacing he is in this film. He might be less charming and likable than he later goes on to become, but I really like how menacing and intimidating he is. You know, bullets are bouncing off of him. He is stabbing and shooting his laser thing every which way he can, and his staff is cool, and his outfit is cool, and he's a cool guy. On top of all that, I really appreciate the brilliant plan that Loki has to divide the Avengers, and it works really well, except for the fact that he kills Coulson, and that kind of causes problems. But I really appreciate how smart he was, and he was a really fun villain for this movie, and just I think he works really, really well. Okay, I have gone on long enough about character. It's time to move on to the plot, and I'm sorry I didn't get to talk about Thor or Hawkeye. I think they're both really cool characters and really cool Avengers. I just don't think they do very much in this film. There are some cool scenes, and I'll talk about them later, but for right now, we're just going to get moving on and talk about the plot. So, in talking about the plot of this film, it's hard not to acknowledge how simple it is. It's basically the Avengers come together, they don't work right away. Loki beats them first time, but then they figure it all out, and then they go and beat him up, and they win the day. Not very complicated, but in its simplicity, it finds some extraordinary scenes, and I like that. I really appreciate the fact that the Avengers don't work right away. Even after they all come together, they still have arguments, they still have bickerings, and it's based out of character. It is so well done. We see Thor being arrogant and prideful. We see Captain America being self-righteous. We see Iron Man being sarcastic and witty and goofy. We see Hulk being timid and non-committal and stuff. It is great, and I love that scene where they're all bickering, and it works so well because on top of everything else, while there is a kernel of truth to their arguments and to their problems, we learn that the real reason they're all getting angry and stuff is because of Loki's scepter being right there influencing them. And that is really, really cool and really, really well done. But ultimately, the best thing I can say about the plot of this film and my favorite aspect of it is the fact that it had an excuse to have this big, epic battle at the end of the movie. And that battle is so cool. It is the fulfillment of every superhero dream I had for the Avengers movie, and it worked so well. There were so many fun scenes that kept it moving, kept it interesting, and kept it entertaining, even for general audiences. And I'll get to those scenes in a bit. But first, I want to give a real quick shout out to setting, because I think the setting of this movie is really fun. Both the helicarrier and New York are classic comic book settings for Marvel, and they work really well. And the helicarrier, as you can see, is one of my top 5 images on my settings screen, because I think it was just such a fun set piece for this movie to take place on, and I think it's really cool. But more than just the physical locations, I really appreciate the lore that was expanded on with the MCU that's a part of setting. Notably with the Tesseract, we see how powerful the Tesseract is. Once again, we see how dangerous it is in the wrong hands, and so that was really fun. We learn about the Chitauri, and notably at the end credit scene, we learn about Thanos, and that is a really cool setup for future movies and future things. And so this movie is really cool with its setting. Now, to close this video, I want to talk about some standout scenes from the film, which is going to be a new section that I do. I did it kind of at the end of the Toy Story review, so I'm going to do it here. And it's just a chance for me to talk about some scenes that I really, really liked from the movie that I didn't get to talk about earlier. So let's dive in. Now, I have previously mentioned how I really appreciate the scene where the Avengers are bickering on the helicarrier. I think that scene is really well done and handled well. I also really appreciate the introductions of Black Widow and Iron Man. I think both of those do phenomenal setups for the rest of the movie. But now I will add that I really like the introduction of Captain America and him doing the little punching bag, and between each punch we get a flashback. It's really fun, works really well. And then lastly, with introductions, I want to say that I love Thor's introduction, because I love when Captain America is like, "Are you afraid of a little lightning?" And then Loki says, "I'm not overly fond of what comes next," which is just fantastic line delivery. I love the look of actual fear and worry on his face. Like, his plan might not work if Thor's in the mix. And it's fantastic. On top of all that, it leads to one of the best little fight scenes of the entire film, where Iron Man and Thor go at each other. It's just really fun. There's a lot of fun moments in that. So I love Thor's introduction. Moving on, I want to talk about a couple of my favorite scenes from the final battle, notably Hulk punching the Leviathan after Bruce Banner says, "That's my secret. I'm always angry. I don't care that it doesn't make sense." It is an awesome scene. The music swells. It is so fun, so well done. It gets me pumped every single time. And it's also built up to rather well, because there's two other times in the movie where Hulk alludes to a secret, or at least Bruce Banner alludes to a secret that he doesn't reveal until this epic climactic moment. And this proves Iron Man's point that the Hulk has a purpose in being an Avenger and helping defend New York, because he brought a lot of power and really helped stop the Chitauri, which is awesome. Of course, right after Hulk punches the Leviathan, we have the epic scene of all 6 Avengers standing in a circle, and then Captain America, it becomes the leader that he is and tells all the Avengers, "Here's what you need to do. Here's how we're going to stop the Chitauri," which is just great, and it proves Iron Man wrong this time, conversely, that he's more than just a test tube experiment, that he is this awesome natural-born leader, which is great. More than that, Captain America is proved wrong at the end of this movie with, of course, Iron Man making a selfless sacrifice and not being selfish, which is just phenomenal. Next, I want to talk about Hawkeye being awesome. His no-look shot, always so cool. And then when he shoots Loki, and he knows Loki's just going to catch it, and Loki does, and he gives a little smirk, but then the arrow explodes in his face. Phenomenal. One of my favorite scenes. And of course, that leads into Hulk jumping up to Avengers Tower and calling Loki a puny god, which is just, it's so funny. And that entire sequence of events, hilarious. Lastly, there's one more scene I want to talk about, which is the one shot that occurs in the middle of this battle. It is a very long shot where we get to see all 6 Avengers doing what they do best. Iron Man's flying and shooting lasers. Captain America is using his shield. Hawkeye is shooting arrows and being awesome. And it's just, they're all so cool. And it flows from one Avenger to the next without any cut-its, and it's really smooth and it's really fun. It just shows the Avengers avenging, being superheroes. And I don't know, it makes my superhero heart happy. And I love it. It's the epitome of this movie, and it is just so, so good. All right, I've talked too long about this movie, but I really hope that just goes to show how much I love this film. It's one of my favorite superhero films of all time. I know it's old. I know it's not the most prettily shot, and it doesn't have the best character development or whatever. I don't care. It is a fun superhero movie that shows love to every single one of the superheroes in this, and there are a lot, and it is just so well done and just makes me happy. I don't know. I can't talk about it enough. I can't say it enough. I love this movie. It's one of my top favorite movies of all time. So that's how I feel about the Avengers movie. Really glad I got to gush over an MCU movie rather than hate on one like I did with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.